the extradition of Julian Assange. It is this kind of journalism that is being targeted. A journalism that serves with the most conviction and the most dedication the right of citizens to access free, independent and pluralistic information. By strongly opposing the extradition of Julian Assange, by denouncing the hypocrisy of the extraditing states, the European Federation of Journalists is not defending one man in particular. It is not defending one journalist among many others. It is defending the right of every citizen in Europe to be informed. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks. It's very clear, and if you refer to Galicia and the fact that it's the state which is usually the problem. The state is not only the problem with journalists, but we often tend to forget that the whole idea of the European Convention on Human Rights is that it's usually the state that is the biggest threat to human rights. When the state gets out of order, which happily doesn't happen all the time in Western countries, can we have that? I would like to pass the word to Balthasar Garzon. If I were to mention everything he's been doing for the last 20 years, I would take over for the rest of my time. It suffices to say that that varies from going after Pinochet to trying to lift the immunity of my then, the person who I was in friendship with, Mr. Berlusconi, here in the Council of Europe, and 100,000 other things. But he's now in the capacity of defending Julian Assange. Pass the word over to you.
Gracias, buenos días. El día 19 de junio de 2012,
19 June 2012,
Julian Assange entró en la embajada de Ecuador en Londres como refugiado político.
Julian Assange entered the embassy of Ecuador in London as asylum seeker.
En abril de 2019 fue expulsado de esa embajada violentamente y encarcelado.
In April 2019, he's been expelled from his embassy with violence.
Como ya se ha dicho, ha sido sometido a proceso de extradición y actualmente está en trámite y con riesgo de ser entregado a Estados Unidos.
When he was arrested, he's put into jail and he has to face an extradition process and with the risk of being extradited to the US.
La principal amenaza para Julian Assange y otros periodistas de Estados Unidos es la llamada ley de espionaje de 1917.
The main threat against Julian Assange is the so-called law on espionage or spy from 1917.
Todo lo que no sea atacar esa ley casi es perder el tiempo. Todo lo que no sea atacar legalmente, internacionalmente esa ley, hasta conseguir que no se aplique extraterritorialmente, es perder el tiempo.
If we don't attack this extraterritorial application of this law on an international level, we lose our time.
En el caso de Julian Assange, todas las resoluciones internacionales han sido positivas.
In the case of Julian Assange, all the international resolutions have been positive for Julian Assange.
Todas las nacionales en Gran Bretaña, salvo una, y en Estados Unidos, negativas.
And all the national decisions in the UK, except one, and in the US, have been negative.
El problema es la interpretación que se hace de la ley de espionaje aplicándola a casos de seguridad nacional y considerando que Julian Assange ataca la seguridad nacional de Estados Unidos.
The problem is the implementation of this law on espionage against Julian Assange and the interpretation of that law.
Que un periodista, por informar públicamente, como es su obligación, sobre hechos delictivos y de una gravedad inusitada contra o de crímenes contra la humanidad y corrupción, es el más puro contrasentido que puede existir.
fact that Julian Assange is persecuted following this espionage law for only exposing international crimes and crimes against humanity shows that this law is a paradox.
El caso es que hasta el día de hoy no se ha tratado ese tema en Gran Bretaña y estamos pendientes de que se acepte discutir sobre este tema fundamental.
The difficult issue is that in the UK this discussion didn't happen. It's only going to happen now.
A Julian Assange y el Wikileaks se les acusa con base a la ley de espionaje por haber revelado secretos y atacar la seguridad del Estado.
The accusation against Julian Assange and WikiLeaks is for revealing state secrets.
Sin embargo, simultáneamente, Julian Assange, todos sus defensores y todos aquellos que desde 2012 hemos tenido acceso a la Embajada de Ecuador en Londres, ha sido espiado, ha sido vigilado y han sido cercenados todos sus derechos por Estados Unidos y en particular por los servicios de inteligencia.
What is very specific in this case is that since Julian Assange was in the embassy, all of his lawyers has been under surveillance when they were in the embassy, and all the people who went to the embassy.
En la defensa de Julian Assange ha habido durante mucho tiempo una doble moral por parte de muchos medios de comunicación que han ocultado el caso y la gravedad del mismo.
I have to consider that there is sort of double morality in the case of Julian Assange for the people who have been referring to his case and giving information about his case.
En mi país, España, todavía hoy, y cuando hoy me refiero es exactamente a este día, algún medio de comunicación le acusa de ser un agente ruso y de estar con los llamados independentistas catalanes y no como periodista.
For example, in my own country, in Spain, today is the same day of today.
Hoy mismo.
He's accused of being a Russian spy and working for the Catalan independence instead of being considered as a journalist.
En España hay un procedimiento que investiga estas agresiones de la CIA y de todo el servicio de inteligencia contra Julian Assange. Sin embargo, todavía esperamos que en Gran Bretaña se tome en cuenta ese hecho.
There is an important information here in the sense that there is a criminal investigation ongoing. There is a judge in Spain for all the surveillance that occurred in the embassy in London, because it was Spanish security that was doing that.
Lo que quiero decir con esto es que todos y todas los que estamos aquí estamos concienciados con el caso de Julian Assange.
What I want to say with this is that all the people that are here have a conscience, are conscious of what's happening to Julian Assange.
Pero no somos capaces de trasladar a los gobiernos democráticos que este es uno de los más graves, cuando no el más importante ataque a la libertad de expresión que existe hoy en día.
But we are not in the capacity to transfer this concern to the governments, as this case is one of the most important cases and most threatening case for the liberties today.
Yo creo que nos quedan muy pocos países para ir y proclamar esta realidad de Julian Assange, y sin embargo Julian sigue en prisión y en una situación totalmente lamentable por ejercer lo que es la obligación de cualquier periodista, que es informar.
At this point, Julian Assange remains in prison. We've not been in the possibility to have him released, even though he was only in prison for his work as a journalist.
Hemos visto cómo el programa Pegasus, cómo agresiones a periodistas, como eliminación física y asesinatos de periodistas se siguen produciendo y sin embargo no encontramos la forma de protección internacional de los mismos.
We've seen that although there is like espionage going on, like in the Pegasus situation, so the murders of journalists, that we have not been in the capacity to fight and stop this situation.
Hace muchos años, yo propuse la posibilidad de la inclusión de la persecución sistemática de periodistas dentro del artículo 7 del Estatuto de Roma.
Several years ago, I did a proposal to include in Article 7 of the ICC statute, International Court statute, the systemic persecution of journalists as crime against humanity.
Tengo que reconocer que después de 20 años no he tenido mucho éxito.
I have to recognize that after 20 years, I didn't get many success in that.
Sin embargo, todavía están por definir esos mecanismos internacionales. Quizás este es el momento de hacerlo y de pasar a una acción y exigir que se definan esos mecanismos internacionales.
Today, still, there is no international mechanism that has been put into place to reinforce the protection, and maybe now is the moment to do it.
Hay forma de hacerlo, lo que falta es la voluntad de llevarlo a cabo.
There are ways to do it, what is lacking is the will to do it.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, Balthasar. I can tell you that the film Hacking Justice, which is very well at the center of our Julian Assange now in Germany, my country, is and a lot of cinemas now, and so it's I think you play all the time since 2012 play a really central role in this case. Thank you very much for this. I would like now to hand over to Dr. Deepa Driver. She is a trade unionist and a constant trial observer of the case in London, and for our group here in the Assembly, she is the official observer of what's happening. And maybe Deepa, you can tell us a bit about the current situation, what's going on.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you to the Parliamentary Assembly for hosting this side event. I'd like to start with the story of two Muslim men, Khalid al-Masri and Mohammadou al-Slahi. Khalid al-Masri is a German citizen who was abducted while on holiday on the Macedonian border and indicted. When it was discovered that it was a case of mistaken identity, Mr. al-Masri was not sent back with the sodomy he had suffered. They continued to deport him because he must be back if he had been caught in these circumstances. And Mr. al-Masri was then finally released from the Albanian border and made his way back to Germany, where he found that his family had moved away, thinking he had abandoned them. Nobody believed Mr. al-Masri's story until, with the use of hair sample analysis as well as WikiLeaks releases, Mr. al-Masri got justice here at the European Court of Human Rights. And it is this kind of justice that we seek for the publisher who has exposed the wrongful torture, detention, murder, rape, and horrible brutalities that took place in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and at Guantanamo, which now, 21 years later, still is open, and 37 men are still there. So, if we really think Black Lives Matter, and I say this as a black woman, then we have to care about the lives of those who were murdered, tortured, and who's displaced in the countries that we illegally invaded. And by we, I mean Britain and America. I'd also like to talk about those like Mohammadou al-Slahi, whom you will see tonight at the wonderful event that Christophe and his colleagues are organizing at the Theatre Nacional. He was detained in Guantanamo for 14 years without charge or trial. his life is, a significant portion of his life has been lost. Omar Khadr, a Canadian citizen, who was just a boy, a teenager, when he was abducted. And so WikiLeaks was really important. And when WikiLeaks came on the scene, 2006, 2010 is when they started doing the Iraq war logs and the Afghan war log. What they did was they revolutionized journalism by linking technology to journalism, by allowing what was, you are all nowadays using Dropbox. But to have a secure drop facility for whistleblowers to be able to communicate large volumes of data to not just one journalist or two journalists, who, for example, like Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, who chose not to reveal the truth, for example, in the collateral murder video that some of you may have come across. There are a lot of journalists who are under various pressures, as has been explained. And so it was really important that WikiLeaks engaged with large journalistic organizations like Le Monde and The Guardian and Der Spiegel, but also local journalists in various countries, helping with uncovering corruption, helping with talking about toxic waste dumping on the Ivory Coast. So I urge those of you who are concerned not just about war crimes, but all kinds of human rights, to be concerned about the fact that the United States, which labeled the Muslim men I talked to you about as enemy combatants, and denied them any due process, has now labeled Julian Assange and WikiLeaks non-state hostile intelligence agencies for revealing information that is 100% accurate about US war crimes. What is also frustrating to me, I am the legal observer in the case on behalf of the United European Left, the Holding Society of Socialist Lawyers, and the ELDH, is the misuse of extradition law and the complete ignoring of the protections against politically motivated extraditions. I'm also horrified by the denigration of asylum and the legitimation of torture. The UN Special Rapporteur on Torture has found Mr. Assange to be a victim of torture. You cannot address that torture by continuing to keep him in a maximum security prison, where he has had a stroke in 2021. They have also legitimized arbitrary detention. The UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention found twice, as part of Balthazar's important work in bringing in the international bodies to shame states, to use soft power to encourage states to move, that these findings of arbitrary detention are being ignored. And Mr. Assange continues to remain in one of Britain's most hard, difficult prisons, where on the first night of his hearings he was moved from cell to cell 5 times, handcuffed, strip searched twice, and kept in a vertical coffin which transported him from the prison to the court. Where at the court, observers like me, Amnesty International, Reporters Without Borders, and others were denied access to the court. This is happening in Britain, that supposedly lectures the world on the rule of law. I'm also disturbed by the evidence that has surfaced through the Yahoo News investigation of the plot to assassinate Mr. Assange or extract him from the embassy, where they sought to poison him. We know this has been confirmed by 30 US government insiders. It is a fundamental, it doesn't compute, it doesn't make sense that you can have a fair trial when the state that is seeking to extradite you and where the bodies that determine your pre-trial detention conditions are the ones that plotted to kill you. So the CIA and the FBI will determine Mr. Assange's pre-trial detention conditions. They have also, as Balthazar said, spied on the privileged legal conversations of Mr. Assange. They have his legal strategy in full. The UK has itself, the judges have shown several conflicts of interest. And Europe's security, we are talking a lot about European security and about the war in other parts of the world, one which continues in Yemen, of course. And Europe's security is intimately tied to its demands for justice and peace in other parts of the world, that it doesn't foster violence and war elsewhere. Our freedom is linked to peace and justice globally, and freedom, democracy, peace and justice can only be nurtured, and the UK's long legal history can only be nurtured if we stop imprisoning journalists in our worst prisons. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your clear speech. There's a lot more to tell, but I would like to open the floor to questions from all of you. I would like to make one comment before. A number of us are putting out a written statement against the extradition of Mr. Assange. If there are any MPs in the room that haven't signed it, please come to me or to Andre, now or afterwards, no problem. And I'll now open the floor to questions, but I first slightly look at Jeremy Corbyn, who was in the US last week, to maybe also make an observation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a question. But please use the microphone because we're on a live stream now.
Thank you. I was Jeremy Corbyn, United Kingdom Socialist Green Group. I was in Washington last week for a very big event we held at the National Press Club, which included some very, very powerful presentations from a whole range of people, not just across the United States, but wider than that. But the most powerful to me came from Daniel Ellsberg and from Noam Chomsky, who were pointing out that Julian's continued imprisonment is essentially because he told the truth in that very place, the National Press Club, about the illegal killing of civilians by US forces during its wars. And his condition at the moment is that he is going through a legal process, as has been explained. His physical condition is that he's in a maximum security prison in Britain. I visited this prison before, and the conditions there are appalling. He is a remand prisoner, not a convicted prisoner, and he's now been held there for several years. His health is obviously seriously at risk as a result of it. But the wider message is quite simply this: if we don't raise a huge amount of voices around the world to create an atmosphere around the world that Julian Assange is a victim of being a journalist who wanted to tell the truth, and if he's then sent to the United States and gets a 175-year sentence, it's a death sentence, and it will mean that every other investigative journalist around the world who might be exposing truths about not just the USA, but any other country, our own countries, Russia, China, anybody else, will be frightened to do so, and it will be a very bad day for the idea that journalists actually stand up and speak out simple truths that we all need to know. And I hope that we get a wide number of signatures here today. We have the event on at the National Theatre here in Strasbourg this evening, and in the UK we're mounting a very big campaign in support of Julian Assange, to the extent that we invited people to come and surround the British Parliament and hold hands, not just around the building, but across two bridges around the river. It was many thousands of people required to do that, and we achieved it. And we were very proud of doing that. But the whole campaign has to take a stage further. And so it does mean American politicians standing up, but it also means journalists standing up, because if they just walk by and ignore Julian's plight, then who is going to be next when they expose any uncomfortable truth about any government anywhere around the world? We are elected politicians. We have a particular duty to stand up for human rights and the right to know. In our own parliaments, we demand the right to know what our government is doing. Collectively, we need to support Julian and his demand that we all know what was going on in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Guantanamo, by multinational companies, and so much else. This is, to me, a very, very important issue of justice and the civil liberties of one man.
Thank you. Thanks for your case statement. I'll first pass to Mr. Gurasson from Iceland.
Hello, my name is Gurasson from the third party in Iceland. So I was wondering, we've been talking a bit about political prisoners, for example, in Russia, Turkey. Would it mean anything for the conversation to view Mr. Assange as a political prisoner in the UK?
Answers on to one of the lawyers, and especially the special meaning, because the meaning of the prisoner is quite tight.
Puede considerar Julian Assange un preso político, absolutamente. Una persecución política desde el primer minuto hasta el último. La acusación de abuso sexual en Suecia fue instrumental. Totalmente dirigida a utilizar Suecia, que en ese momento era país proclive al sistema de rendición, es decir, de entrega.
The idea was that Swedish was in that time a state that was participating to the
rendición, de entrega de prisioneros de Irak, Afganistán, etc.
From Afghanistan, Iraq, etc.
Y también respecto de Julia. Ese era el objetivo. Durante todos estos años siempre estuvimos dispuestos a ir a Suecia, a aclarar todo. Nunca se nos aceptó. Estados Unidos mantuvo la orden de detención oculta
USA kept the international warrant secret.
Casi durante 10 años, tiempo en el que el gran jury estuvo y está investigando.
Thanks for that answer. I'd love to pass the floor to a few other people, but there's another committee meeting starting here within 2 minutes on the election of judges, no less. And if we don't have good judges in Strasbourg, we won't get anywhere. So 2 things for now. Please, for those of you, I know what's going to happen tonight, and I won't be there because I have to be with the victim of the MH17 crash. Please come to the theatre in Strasbourg, and you will pleasantly be surprised about what's happening there. And for the MPs that are still here and haven't signed this, please come around and do so quickly. Thank you very much.
Dostlar, canlı yayın bitti. Bu korrupsiyalı mübarizə aparanlara ait tədbir idi. Mən Emin Hüseynov burada Avropa Şurasındaydı. Maraqlı çıxışçılar var idi. Sizə Azərbaycan dilində yığcam bir xəbər çatdıracağıq. Sağ olun. Salamat qalın.